Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Hello students. As you all know that we are going through the process of digestion in humans. And for this purpose we have discussed the 5 major steps, and today in particularly we will talk about that when the food is digested in the stomach. From the stomach, it is whenever the churning process has done completely from the stomach, it enters into an other part that we call the first part of the small intestine. So stomach pushes the chyme into the first part of the small intestine. Small intestine is further divided into 3 parts. It's a duodenum, ileum and jejunum. So in what is happening in the first part, that we call the duodenum. In the duodenum, three different things are taking place in the duodenum. First, the bile. It's a kind of the secretion that is helping to digest the lipids means the fat portion, by the process called emulsification. Secondly, pancreatic juice has been released, and it helped to digest the protein portion that is present there, and it can help to digest the protein, lipids and carbohydrates completely there. And third, the intestinal juice that has been secreted there, it is helping in the complete digestion. So basically the purpose of the small intestine is the complete digestion, and then the next step start that we call the absorption of the food. So for this purpose, for the absorption of the food, for further digestion, the food from the duodenum is pushed into the second part of the small intestine, that is the jejunum. Jejunum is a 2.4 centimeter long coiled tube. It is basically in the coiled, adjusted in a coiled way, and the function of the, you can say, jejunum is to complete the digestion of the proteins, carbohydrates and lipids completely. So from the duodenum, then to the jejunum, finally the food is entered into the last coiled portion of the small intestine that we call ileum. Now ileum is 3.5 meter long part of the small intestine. It is in the form of the twists and you can say a coiled portion. And one more major thing which it is having the small villi. Villi is basically meant for increasing the surface area for the absorption of the maximum digested food. Here this is the structure of a villi. The singular of the villi, we call it villus. Now villus, what is the villus? If we just have the complete look of the villus, it's a 1 cell thick villus, having on the one side having the lacteals, other side it's completely having the connection with the blood capillaries, having the supply of the blood capillaries here, plus you can say one major hepatic portal vein is present here, which is taking the supply of the blood rich in the nutrients that is being absorbed by the food to the liver there. Have a look of the villi. If we just go through the structure of the villi, the outer layer we call it the epithelium. The epithelium is the 1 cell thick to increase diffusion rate. Diffusion means the material can go into it. Secondly, it's having the center portion that we call lacteal. Lacteal absorb the fatty acids and the glycerols. And third, it is having a rich supply of the blood capillaries which can absorb the glucose and the amino acids. Now, when the food, the purpose of the villi is to do the maximum of the absorption of the nutrients that is being present inside the digested food. So that it is having the central part, you can say hepatic portal vein. In the center part, it's having the hepatic portal vein, which is taking these nutrients directly to the liver portion. The digested molecules, that is simple sugar and amino acids, are absorbed from the intestine into the blood capillaries present in the villi. and amino acids are absorbed from intestine into the blood capillaries. Blood carries them away from the small intestine via the hepatic portal vein and goes to the liver for further filtering. Here, toxins are removed when extra food is stored. From liver, the required food molecules go toward heart via hepatic vein. Fatty acids and glycerols present in the small intestine are absorbed into the lacteal of Willis. Lacteal carries them to the main lymphatic duct. From there, they enter the bloodstream. So this is all about the, you can say, structure and the function of the villi. Villi is an outward projections that are present in the small intestine, and the main function of these projections is to increase the surface area for the complete absorption of the food, and then after absorption, then taking it to the liver for the further you can say function. The
Imagine we have this much area and we have to fit in this pipe in it. How do we go about it? This pipe, which is almost many times the length of this area, can be accommodated only when coiled or folded several times. Same is the case with the next part of the alimentary canal. And which is this organ? Well, after the stomach in our previous video, now we'll be discussing about the small intestine. In our last video, we learnt about the food pipe and the stomach and how they participate either directly or indirectly in the process of digestion. The esophagus helps in easy passage of food, while the stomach is in charge of the majority of the digestion. But does the process end here? No. The process continues and the partly digested food reaches the next part of the canal. This is called the small intestine. Is this part really small as its name suggests? Nope. We should really not go by its name. That's because it's not really very small. Rather, it's a very long coiled tube. But then why is it called the small intestine? Well, that's because the diameter of this tube is quite small. So it's the diameter and not its length that gives it name. The complete structure is very long. So to understand it better, we divide the coiled part in 3 distinct regions. These are called the duodenum, jejunum, and ileum. The semi-digested food from the stomach is passed on to the duodenum first. Is this part involved in further digestion of the food? Actually, yes. When the partially digested food enters the duodenum, it gets mixed with the 2 major secretions. These secretions come from the 2 most important glands, that is, the liver and the pancreas. We will learn about these glands later in the videos based on digestive glands. For now, all we need to know is that carbohydrates, proteins, and fats get digested partly as they reach the duodenum and then completely as they pass through the small intestine. So the carbohydrates, proteins, and fats are gradually broken down further as they span the small intestine completely. That is, as they pass through jejunum and ileum. Now tell me one thing. What does the alimentary canal do with so much of digested food? I mean, how does it make sure that the nutrients reach all the cells? Well, that begins with the next step of the absorption of nutrients. And needless to say, it occurs in the intestines. Rather, the small intestine plays a major role in absorption. If we zoom in the structure of the small intestine here, we find that the pipe consists of cells having these finger-like projections called the villi. And when we zoom in these villi, we find that they're made up of cells which again have smaller finger-like projections. And what will these be called? The smaller ones are called microvilli. The whole purpose of having these villi and microvilli is to increase the surface area. And what does that help in? An increased surface area helps in better and greater absorption. Each villi is like a single finger which is hollow from within. Inside it, as we can see here, There are blood capillaries that help in carrying the nutrients absorbed. And what are these structures? These are called as lacteals. Their major function is to absorb the small globules of fat which cannot directly enter these blood capillaries. So this is how absorption takes place in the small intestine. And what next? After the small intestine absorbs most of the nutrients, the remaining undigested food is passed on to the next part of the alimentary canal. Let's have a look at this part, the large intestine, in detail in the next video.
Have a look of the adaptive features of the small intestine and how they are performing their functions. The first feature is that it is very long, about 5 meter in a human adult. And what is how it's doing the function? This gives plenty of time for digestion to be completed. Means more and more time the food is being stayed there in these twists and turns, and for digested food to be absorbed as it slowly passes through. The second important feature of the small intestine is having the villi. Each villus, the singular, each villus is covered with cells which have even smaller projections on them called microvilli. And these microvilli, how they're doing the function? This gives the inner surface of the small intestine a large surface area. The larger the surface area, the faster nutrients can be absorbed. The third adaptation, villi contain blood capillaries. The monosaccharides, amino acids, water, mineral and vitamins and some fats passed into the blood to be taken to the liver and then round the body. Villi contain lacteals which are part of lymphatic system. Fats are absorbed into the lacteals, and then villi have walls only 1 cell thick. The digestive nutrients can easily cross the wall to reach the blood capillaries and lacteal. So in this way, these adaptations help to do the maximum of the digestion and the maximum of the absorption. That is the basic function of the small intestine to perform there in the human digestive system. Hence, I guess the function of the small intestine become very clear to you people. So, in a review, the first function is the movement or peristalsis of the food particles, which can increased by the parasympathetic stimulation. The second important function is the secretion of the intestinal juice. And the third important function of the small intestine is the completion of the chemical digestion of carbohydrates, proteins and fats in the villi. And finally, the undigested particles will be pushed to the next part of the digestive tract, next part of the alimentary tract, that is the large intestine. And the other absorbed nutrients will go to the liver for the further assimilation process. So open the now thorough read page number 161 and 162 of your book to have a clear idea about the structure and function of the small intestine. So once I guess it's clear to everyone that I am a small intestine. I am having the three main parts. I am divided into three main parts: duodenum, jejunum and ileum. And my major function is to do the complete digestion and the absorption of the food. And after absorption, I am taking that absorbed food from the small intestine to the liver, and all the undigested particles that is present along the whole food pipe and the whole pipe of the small intestine, it is simply pushed to the other big part, that is the large intestine. and still the journey of the food is not completed here. The undigested particles will further, you can say, push to the large intestine. Then from the large intestine, the undigested food particles will be, you can say, taken to the rectum. In the rectum it will be stored for some time, and on after the urge, then it will be simply removed out through an opening that we call the anus. So I guess the journey of the food become very clear to you people. So still our topic is not ended here. In our next topic we will go for the, you can say, detailed structure and function of the large intestine, and then finally the how the food is just been undigested particle will be removed from the body. So stay safe and happy students. Allah Hafiz.